Welcome to the new Missile Age series. It consists of 4 parts. We are on part 4 of 4, grading the 9 nuclear powers. Every nuclear armed state on Earth says the same thing. A human is always in control of the decision to use nuclear weapons. That claim is doing a lot of work. And it isn't equally true or equally verifiable everywhere. This is the final part of this series, and today we're widening the lens. Not one crisis, not one dyad, all 9 nuclear armed states graded on how exposed each one actually is to the mechanism we've spent 3 videos building. Before the comparison, a note on method, because I want to be honest about what this is and isn't. This is a structured open source synthesis. It is not a classified assessment, and it hasn't gone through intercoder validation the way an academic dataset would. It's built from declared national policy and public analysis, coded against 2 dimensions I'll explain in a second. Treat it as a hypothesis about where this mechanism is most likely to bite, not a settled scorecard. 2 of the 9 cells carry real uncertainty, and I'll tell you exactly why when we get there. 2 structural features determine how exposed a state is to machine speed crisis instability. The first is entanglement, how physically and informationally commingled a state's conventional and nuclear command systems are. Shared early warning sensors, shared communications, command nodes that serve both missions at once. High entanglement means a conventional strike can look like a nuclear one, and vice versa. The second is structural tau, how much deliberation time a state's declared posture builds in by default. A launch on warning doctrine leaves far less room to think than a posture that waits to actually confirm a strike has landed before responding. 2 patterns stand out clearly across the 9 states. First, the states at greatest risk are the ones combining high entanglement with structurally short deliberation time. Pakistan and North Korea sit here most acutely, and the India-Pakistan dyad, which we covered in full last video, is the likeliest theater for this mechanism to actually fire in a real crisis. Second, and this is just as informative, the dedicated low entanglement postures of the United Kingdom and France largely insulate them from this mechanism. That's a useful negative case. It tells us the danger isn't AI decision support as such. It's the combination of AI speed with entanglement and short deliberation time. A state that keeps its nuclear command structurally separate from its conventional forces and preserves real time to think is largely protected, regardless of how much AI it's using elsewhere in its military. The argument leans hardest on Pakistan and North Korea. So let me be precise about what would actually move each one, rather than treating this coding as fixed. Pakistan is coded high entanglement, very short deliberation time, with a doctrine that reserves early nuclear use. That's the combination that made it the likely theater for what we saw in part 3. Here's the honest part. This coding would move toward lower risk if Pakistan maintains genuine separation of warheads from short-range delivery systems during a crisis, effectively buying back deliberation time. It would move toward higher risk if those systems are kept mated and pre-authorized. The open record doesn't settle this either way. It's the single largest uncertainty in this entire comparison. North Korea is coded highest risk, but for a different reason. A small, vulnerable arsenal creates severe use it or lose it pressure, and the regime has signaled willingness to use nuclear weapons preemptively rather than lose them to a first strike. Here's the counterintuitive part. This coding would actually move toward lower risk, if North Korea achieved a secure second strike capability, like a survivable submarine-based deterrent. A more survivable arsenal removes the pressure to use it before losing it. It gets worse if its command system stays thin and vulnerable to decapitation while the arsenal itself keeps growing. Both of these hinge on facts about warhead mating and system survivability that just aren't public, which is exactly why I'm presenting this as a structured hypothesis about where to look, not a confident scorecard. Now zoom out, because the backdrop matters too. The world is genuinely tripolar at the great power level now. China's arsenal grew from roughly 500 warheads in early 2024 to around 600 by January 2025, adding about 100 a year since 2023, and US defense planners project more than 1,000 by 2030. Layer on top of that the India-Pakistan-China triangle, India at roughly 180 warheads, Pakistan at roughly 170, and North Korea at around 50. Multipolarity isn't just add more plebs to the board. It degrades how legible signals are across the whole system. A posture calibrated to deter one adversary gets observed and reacted to by others who were never the intended audience. That's exactly what we saw as a side effect in the India-Pakistan crisis, where third-party disinformation shaped a bilateral crisis from entirely outside the dyad. I want to confront this directly because it's the strongest objection to everything I've argued. If the dominant story of the new missile age is really just a quantitative arms race, more warheads, full stop, then this entire series' focus on crisis stability over arms race stability is secondary at best. Three things keep that objection from overturning the argument. First, a bigger arsenal doesn't disprove that AI-driven crisis instability exists. It just confirms arms racing is also real, which nothing here ever denied. Second, and this is the interesting part, the build-up's most dangerous effect is itself a crisis stability effect. A larger Chinese force, paired with new launch-on-warning ambitions, shortens China's own deliberation time, which, through the exact mutual best response logic from Part 2, makes China's adversaries more alert in turn, anticipating a faster reacting China. It's the reciprocal automation spiral again, this time at the level of a rising great power instead of a regional dyad. Third, the prescription differs depending on which problem you think you're solving. If arms racing were the whole story, warhead caps would be the priority. Because crisis instability at the margin of use is the dominant risk, confidence building and decision time measures matter more than numerical ceilings. And that's exactly where policy attention should go. Given all of this, three concrete lines of effort are realistic, even with formal arms control currently lapsed. 1. Restore deliberation time and protect discrimination. Launch notification arrangements, de-alerting where survivability allows, and a real commitment that AI systems won't autonomously initiate use, with human review that's substantive, not just nominal. Nominal human control that rubber stamps machine output doesn't preserve judgment, it just adds a signature. 2. Build confidence at the human-machine interface specifically. Hardened crisis communication links, shared definitions so one state's automated posture isn't misread by another, and stress testing AI-enabled command systems before they're fielded, not after. 3. Rebuild dialogue in stages, not as one grand bargain. A full trilateral arms agreement isn't realistic right now. A staged path, informally observing New START central limits without full verification, incremental transparency among the 5 recognized nuclear powers, and using upcoming NPT review processes is more realistic and better targeted because it prioritizes exactly the crisis stability tools this series has been building toward, rather than warhead counts alone. So here's the through line across these 4 videos, and I'd argue it's easy to underestimate. The number that determines whether the next nuclear crisis stays contained isn't how many weapons exist. It's how much time decision makers believe they have, and how much they trust the machine over their own judgment when that time runs out. Transparency about human control, restored deliberation time, and honest confidence building at the human-machine interface are tools available right now. No new treaty required. No arsenal reduction needed to start. Thanks for watching this series through to the end. If it was useful, the best thing you can do is send part 1 to one person who still thinks this is a story about warhead counts. Full written series including sourcing and the formal model is linked below.